This is AdTechGod, and this is a word from our sponsors. Rainbarrel is a cookieless, consented audience graph that helps advertisers interact with their best fit customers. Digital advertising shouldn't be a black box, which is why Rainbarrel was created by media buyers for media buyers. With Rainbarrel, a tourism board was able to exceed their campaign goals by personalizing their message to sensation seekers, one of 80 socio-ethnic segments known as etho-sense audiences. Get started with Rainbarrel audiences on DV360, The Trade Desk, LiveRamp, and more. Or try out Rainbarrel for free at rbarrel.com. That's RBARREL.com. This is a disclosure. Please note that all guests featured on the AdTechGod pod are invited to participate. They do not pay in any form to appear on the show. However, guests may be sponsors of the AdTechGod community, the AdTech Forum, or other product offerings. Welcome to the AdTechGod pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome back to another episode of the AdTechGod pod, the podcast where we meet the operational leaders that keep their businesses moving forward in sync. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Today, we are thrilled to have a very special guest with us, Stacy Willis, the COO of Playwire. Playwire is an innovative ad tech company known for its stellar work in boosting the businesses of publishers and app developers through enhanced ad revenue and operational efficiency. Stacy's journey in the industry is as fascinating as it is diverse. Spanning from marketing all the way to engineering, this unique blend of expertise has been instrumental in shaping her leadership at Playwire and her approach to this often complex industry. In our conversation today, we'll dive into how Stacy's background has played a crucial role in her current success, the challenges and milestones, and how she perceives the industry moving forward. Stacy, welcome to the AdTechGod pod.
Thank you. I am honored to be here. It's not often you get to speak to a god.
It's honestly all my pleasure, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all your support for the AdTechGod community. Just full disclosure, as a sponsor, it's been incredible to have you guys there and involved with the community.
Yeah, we love it. Thanks for having us,
Stacy. So I start all of the podcasts the same way. I'm looking at your background, and it's pretty impressive. I'd love to hear about how you got into the industry and how you started.
Yeah, so I have a very interesting, windy road that that landed me here. My background, I started out in engineering. So my undergrad, I graduated with a computer science and engineering degree. I did tech for a bit. I got a little tired of sitting in a cubicle by myself and not talking to humans all day. So I ended up going back to get my MBA, fell in love with marketing. And so I spent years doing technical marketing, mostly in the marketing agency space. And I also led a team that did web design. So combination of web design and development, a bunch of SEO, content production, kind of set me up to end up here, but I had no idea it was going to. I went out on my own after working on agency side for quite a while. And I had a client named Playwire that I worked with for a year, helping out on their marketing. And I'm a failed entrepreneur in that I ended up in-house at one of my clients because I loved them so much. And so when you combine the fact that I spent a bunch of time on the creator publisher side, it was a really natural step for me to start digging in deeper and deeper beyond just marketing when I started working with Playwire. And then you layer in a relatively nerdy technical background, though it's pretty far into the past. It paved the way for me to get really involved on our product and tech side as well.
How big of a role do you feel like your engineering background and just general technical understanding helps you today in your operational role and prior to that, marketing role at Playwire?
I think it's huge. It's what really I took away from an engineering degree is less the details of any specific technology or code. Like back, I'm going to date myself, back when I was going to school, C++ was what we all learned in. It's not like anybody uses that today, particularly myself. But it taught problem solving and the ability to pick up and learn something new at the drop of a hat. And I think the other thing it really helped with on the marketing side is the ability to look at things in a system. So you can back up from a really complex or complicated topic and turn it into something that's more of like an explainable system, visual diagram, architecture, all of those pieces. It's something I brought into marketing that was a little harder to find, which is what made me a good fit for technical marketing. I could understand it just enough to turn it around into a systems design that was easy to explain on the other side. And without that experience, there would have been no way I could have done half of the things I've done in my career, and definitely not since I moved into Playwire.
Our industry is a little complicated, and especially some of the solutions out there are so complex. It's so hard to understand. So creating the right marketing message, I'm sure, is challenging for some more than others. I think if you're doing marketing collateral for a beverage, I'm sure that's easier than a customized algorithm for programmatic buying.
Oh, but it's so much more boring.
I know. I don't know. I'd rather do marketing for a beverage, to be honest with you. Get some motorcycles and jump off a hill and say it gives you energy and call it a day.
That's like a liquid death with their water. That's
exactly.
Their approach.
Yeah, it's just like water in a can. Here, it's $4. It's amazing
it is.
Marketing.
They've done an incredible job.
You've been obviously with Playwire for going on almost 2.5 years, and your past is pretty great because I do see that you did some consulting, you did some stuff that was contract work for a couple of years, and with that came obviously the knowledge that you need to kind of get into a groove with your current employer. But what do you feel in your history of working in the industry is really the biggest milestone for you? And what do you feel was the one thing or the few steps that you took to reach a vice president role or chief operating officer role?
I would say nothing happens like with just one step. It's always like there's a whole foundation that's underneath it that's hard to ignore. And so the foundation that sits underneath a lot of what I learned after I joined Playwire, because Playwire, aside from another contract work that I did, was the first time I'd ever worked in ad tech specifically. But years spent writing content for SEO algorithms and designing, launching websites and understanding how do people navigate through a website? Where do you place things to increase conversion? And all of that theory and knowledge that comes from web design and development was a hugely important foundation for when I came in the door and really started learning a lot more about the yield side of the business. So it's combining a lot of like web development and tech with like a business level understanding of just, how do you build a revenue stream and what is your best producer in terms of a placement. And so I learned a ton from our VP of Yield, Miles at Playwire. He's like, his nickname is Dials internally. But I did a bunch of content on the marketing side, and I do all of my content interview based. And that was really like my ad tech university, was writing yield content after interviewing incredibly smart people. And it helped me learn enough about it to be dangerous to say, how do we knit together operations between this team and that team? And that was really like the foundation that I jumped off of into the role that I'm in today.
It's incredible how much you learn from coworkers. I got off of a call today with someone that said, I'm kind of confused in this role and having some challenges. Can I ask you a couple questions? And they don't know who I am, obviously. So I was answering those questions, and then I said, you need to go to talk to that person and go talk to that person. They're like, is it okay that I say I don't know? I'm like, it's absolutely 1000% to say you don't know. I'm like, always lean on the people who know things. They're open to teaching you. And I think with even your experience, like you obviously knew a lot about marketing. You obviously had an engineering background, but it was the combination of that and having someone who was, sitting down with you, explaining the importance of yield and the pain points and the placements that really kind of pushed you into the next role, right? To be able to understand how it all pieces together and how operationally it should work.
100%. I mean, and any advice I'm ever giving to anyone, and it's still true today, right, is don't ever be afraid to ask what you might think is a dumb question. I feel like 99% of our problems come from us thinking we're going to look dumb by asking a question because, if I don't know the answer to it, I'm going to look stupid. But assuming something and working off of an assumption that's even slightly wrong is so much more detrimental. And so I just wasn't afraid to be like, yeah, I don't know what that means. Can you tell me what that means and explain it to me until I get it? And I still do that to this day. There's still plenty of times where I'm like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to need you to go ahead and explain that to me over and over again until I understand it.
Oh, I'm even going to go out on a limb and say that I think if you don't ask and then you don't know and you have no idea what the answer is and walk into a meeting because you are too confident that you know everything, actually makes you look dumb. I think you're better off asking someone, hey, I know you're in engineering. How does this work? I know you're in sales or account management or whatever. Can you explain this to me so I understand? I think that's a much better angle.
And one so few people take, it's sad.
It is. I just don't, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's embarrassment or I don't know if it's ego or sometimes it might be one or the other or a combination of both. But I feel like nobody knows everything here. I've run a poll before asking, how well do you understand this one item? And it was all over the map. It was like senior leaders, SVPs, VPs, C title. They didn't know. And so it's like, it's okay to ask both up your chain of, command or down. Like there's people there who know it at your company. Ask them.
And my position is if I don't feel like I know it well enough to explain it to someone else, I don't know it well enough yet. I think that comes from my marketing side, right? All the content we built was interview based. So in order to be able to produce content, you have to be able to explain it correctly. So I think my digging in to understand something comes from that point of I better be able to turn around and explain this. So I dig pretty far.
Yeah, and I think that leads us into kind of like the next topic, which is, the industry, I say this all the time, keeps changing. By the time we release this, I'm sure some other change would have happened, whether it's some sort of M&A activity or some sort of regulation. But what do you find is the biggest challenge for you personally in terms of the industry and your career or your day-to-day role?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge, and it's just super not specific to an industry, but it's one that definitely exists in this industry, is human, right? Like more of what I spend my day doing is making sure a bunch of human beings are all rowing in the same direction, because it's really, really easy to have one department doing one thing towards a goal and then another department doing something totally not thinking about the goal of the other department and accidentally get in the way. And so really it's just making sure that all of the people have all of the right endpoint in mind and that everybody's rowing in that same direction. Biggest challenge, it's so non-specific to an industry, but human beings are always the biggest challenge anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, that is actually a really good one and not one I expected. So I didn't really have an answer in my head or a response, but I agree. I've experienced that in the past where it's like the boat rowing competitions you see during the Olympics. I don't know what it's called. But if one person's out of sync, you're losing. So unfortunately, you all have to be in sync and aiming towards the same target, or else you're totally out of whack and you're going to fall behind. Team collaboration is super important. Team communication as well.
100%. And I think probably my role lends itself to that kind of an answer because that's my whole job every day.
I mean, outside of, people and operations and making sure everything is ticking forward, what do you find is the most helpful in terms of your contribution to the team to help them stay on the right path? What do you do, I guess, internally to make sure everybody's in a rhythm?
So I'm really politely annoying is the way I'd describe myself if you were to give me an adjective. But at the end of the day, my whole job is to be the glue between what our publishers and our partners need from us and how our team is executing towards those goals. So it's really easy to get stuck in a loop of, I'm doing activity, I'm doing things, I'm marking off tasks. My whole job is to make sure I'm bringing in all right, but here's what's happening on the outside. Like, here's what we're bringing to the market. Here's what we're giving to our publishers. And I've spent, again, coming from the marketing side probably brings a lot of this. I do all kinds of case study interviews, things like that. I'm a lot of talking to customers about what they want, what they need, how we provide value to them. And so my job is to really be the glue of how do we make sure that everybody on the boat is rowing in the right direction to continually provide exactly what's needed on the outside from our customers and basically translate that between the two sides of the fence.
Awesome. That actually sounds like fun.
It's so fun. What you do? I love it. There are definitely days where it's exhausting. But for the most part, like the conversations I get to have with our customers, like I get so excited about hearing, we have a customer who inherited, or no, he got it as a gift from his mom when he was like 14 years old. He got a domain name, built this great community about one of his passions, and like we drive enough revenue that gets to be his entire job. And like hearing his story and talking, I get so jazzed about it. Like it's just so fun.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Dad, if you're listening, I wish you bought a domain, something really good like google.com. I'd be rich. What direction do you feel like the industry is heading in? You guys work with a multitude of publishers on the monetization piece, but what direction do you feel like the general industry is moving in, and how can that positively impact Playwire or the industry in general?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend I see is kind of the idea of consolidation. And this is especially important for like mid-market publishers. So I think in March, it was that Jounce released their report on like the sales houses and like how much percentage of the bid stream was really taken up by like 3 to 4 sales houses. And that those sales houses are getting preference because they're essentially like putting in all of the technical work to make sure that the economics are where they should be for buyers up the chain, from SSPs to DSPs. Like they're building all the pipes so that they're the most efficient and effective for the buyers, which means buyers naturally want to buy through those pipes. And we're starting to see a shift away from mid-market publishers wanting to build in-house operations and more towards them wanting to work with a sales house that will represent them. And what's really interesting about that is it creates this really cool force on the sales houses to start to identify their differentiation points so that publishers can pick the right one to fit their needs, right? And so some of them have really niched down in like a specific format of website, like a layout style tends to work really best with their technology. And so it's really cool to almost as a forcing function to make each of these sales houses start to have to compete and deliver better results for publishers that are more fitting of what they're asking for, because they're all kind of pitted against each other.
So is it kind of like the return of like a vertical network kind of play? Is it, we want to focus on automotive sector, so we're going to go and try to onboard automotive focused publishers across the board, and then sales houses would go and represent that inventory and market?
I think that there's some of that.
Yeah.
I think that's actually how a lot of the sales houses developed, right? Like in the female sector, we definitely grew up in the gaming sector, but actually we're shifting away from that. We're trying to take our strategic learnings about everything we know. We have a ton of experience with how to make layouts work best for ads in all formats, as opposed to saying, hey, you're stuck with a blog layout or whatever. We're really focused on how do we continue to provide guidance on layout and structure of sites that make it the best combination of user experience and ad experience.
It's like user experience optimization plus monetizing inventory.
Yep. And I think the big thing that we're seeing with that mid-market shift is that these are people who are used to running stuff in-house and having control and choices and options and being able to decide how they want to build a user experience that fits their ethos just as much as it fits their revenue needs. And so we've doubled down on the idea of choice, right? We're really focused on saying, how do we make sure we're enabling you? We're going to make sure we do a lot of education and help you understand the impacts of one choice versus another. But allowing more choice in the hands of publishers is really where I see our future going. In particular, is how we're responding to this change.
So this kind of takes us to like the next, can I call it the next segment? The next segment of our podcast. If you weren't working at Playwire and you were not in ad tech at all, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd probably still be doing content in some form or fashion. I have this big goal one day. I want to write a book. I love writing. It's how I express myself as a human. I still find ways to do it, and I'll never stop doing it. So I'd love to be able to like put myself towards like a big, big project, like a book.
I can't write at all.
Oh, I love writing. I love it.
I am the worst. I've tried to even just like write like a little blog, I'm so bad at it. I'm a lot better at speaking and talking too much than I am at writing.
Oh, see, I can write too much all day.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, I can't. I've tried that a million times. I feel like I've tried a few times and I just suck at it. I'd much rather talk, which is probably why I have a podcast.
It works.
It does work. Okay. What controversial hill are you willing to die on today?
I'm always willing to die on the hill of you can have your cake and eat it too. In the context of ad tech, it's that advertisers and publishers, if they work together in the right way, both get what they want at the end of the day. It's not like one versus the other. I feel like in business, we definitely have this concept of if somebody wins, somebody else has to lose, which I hate because that's not true. And so the hill I'm always on top of, when I'm talking to anyone is that you can live in a world where you can control for the best possible scenarios for an advertiser and a publisher at the same time. And then both of them get way better results than they would if you're expecting one of them to win and one of them to lose. And so that's really what's like a big focus of my day today is constantly reminding everyone that I work with, everyone that's a partner of ours that no, we're going to go live in that middle where 1 + 1 = 3 or both people win simultaneously.
I mean, that's my motto.
Heck yeah. It's way more fun that way.
It is. It's, I don't want to take anyone out. It's actually quite the opposite. I think if everybody works together, then it is the 1 + 1 = 3. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2. I think with all partners that you work with, it should work that way, including publisher partners.
And I feel like in ad tech, it's definitely like, it's far from viewed that way normally. It's definitely like, oh yeah, if you're serving for the needs of advertiser, you're gonna be, cheating the publisher, and then vice versa. And I think that's absolutely, you can, if you solve for both of you do better.
And the winner take all strategy gets exhausting too. Mm-hmm. I mean, not only at the executive level, but honestly, even at the employee level, like it gets really exhausting when you're like, I need to win it all or not get anything at all. But I am sensing, and this is just my own perspective of things, that over the last 6 to 12 months, that you are finding companies that you historically wouldn't think would be partnering together are partnering together because they're realizing that sometimes it's easier to partner than build.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's doesn't have to compete to see increased revenue and client onboarding if you just work together in the right way.
I'm also a big proponent too of being the expert at what you're the expert at. I think a lot of times we view somebody who's in a simultaneous or like a similar category but doesn't do exactly what we do as like a potential threat. But that kind of goes to the idea of people partnering together. I think that there's so many opportunities that you're like, hey, if I just let that person be really great at what they're at, I'm going to be really great at what I'm. And then we work together to offer that combined solution to the marketplace. Then again, it's that everybody wins mentality.
Totally. What do you think in the industry, in the next 6 to 12 months, like really has strong tailwinds behind it? What do you think we're going to be looking at in, 2020? God, it's almost 2025. 2025, getting old. 2025. Gosh, what do you think in this industry is going to be really positive and revenue driving?
I think there's so many leading indicators that tell me finding that middle ground between user experience and ad revenue generation is going to keep being really, really important. We're on the heels of a lot of talk about MFA and how we, don't keep walking down that MFA path. We have a lot of quality focused initiatives up and down the whole ad tech pipe. And we're really seeing that it no longer pays to overdo it. You get paid back for being really smart and really selective with your ad placements so that they still vastly focus and create the right user experience on the other end. So we're going to see a lot more of a dialing in by specific user experience on a site. And what I mean by that is a lot less of hey, here's your templated standard layout that every single person in the entire world uses. And a lot more of very specific, how do I make sure that my site is delivering the perfect combination of experience and revenue for my audience. And so we're really focused on how do we build the pipes to support that like very hyper customized and hyper focused approach for each individual publisher so that they can deliver the experience they want on their end. So that's why we're definitely leaning that way ourselves, because we see all of those initial leading indicators and things pushing us in that direction.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Add to content ratio is a big deal. The MFA
huge.
play was wild. I mean, I think we're all kind of familiar with it and we all knew that it existed. I don't think we necessarily labeled it, but labeling it and then highlighting it in the market the last 6 months has been like really eye-opening to me. I knew it existed. I knew there were junk sites, but now it's out there. And I think it's a good thing that the industry is kind of eliminating spend from those types of publishers by choice, unless the brand wants to. If they want to, they can go ahead and spend there. I wouldn't, but they can go ahead and do it. But ideally bringing, higher quality user experience and valuable conversions.
Yeah, I think the other thing that happened when it wasn't being monitored in the way it is today, right, is that really great sites felt like the only way they were going to be able to keep up or get a piece of the pie was to keep throwing more ads into their experience. And so I think kind of almost against their better judgment, shifted more towards the MFA feeling and are struggling now to pull back from it, right? So we're really seeing that pulling back from that does pay off, though.
The dollar should be shifting towards quality publishers and quality journalism and quality content. I mean, it's sad. It's like, you have brands that want to associate with top tier publishers, and those top tier publishers are unfortunately under pressure to deliver more ads because their revenues are falling behind. Well, you have a pretty crappy site with 70% ads and 30% content that's just siphoning money. It's pretty sad to see the negative impact on quote unquote premium publishers and content just because of the need for revenue driving and the lack of, transparency and visibility to advertisers.
Yeah. And I definitely think this kind of comes full circle to the conversation we were having about like that Jounce report and the shift to like the majority of the bid stream running through sales houses. Like we have a lot of sway as the sales houses to say like, look at our commitment to this level of quality. Like it helps all of the publishers on the other end if some of the big players take that commitment and stop upping the ante to say, oh, more ads, more ads, more ads.
Right. It's incredible. I'm genuinely happy that this was addressed, and I think it's good for the industry long term. I think people will adjust and spend will adjust, and I think it's a learning curve for some, and others. I think they need to reposition their sites to a way that's more valuable to advertisers. And I don't think many of them did it in a way to be malicious. I just think that there was an opportunity to do it, and there was no repercussions for it. It was an acceptable practice. Not anymore. So, adjust them and provide better content.
Yeah. The pendulum swinging back towards, at the end of the day, what is the ultimate person we're in service of here is the audience, right? The person who visits the publisher site and has an experience with it, right? The pendulum is definitely swinging back in their direction as like the guiding light of what we focus on.
Well, this actually brings us to the end of the podcast, Stacy. So thank you so much for being here today. And I really appreciate you and Playwire for having you here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great discussion.
Same here. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, a podcast for the people about the people that make AdTech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.